If you want to have a smooth gaming performance, the GPU or graphics card is the most important component. This component will determine the number of FPS that you get, so if you are on a budget and you get this component wrong, you will be hurting your gaming performance, making the game feel laggy, and you also may suffer from FPS drops. For that reason, today I will show you the best budget graphics cards for every resolution, and I'll also show you which ones not to buy for you to avoid overspending in a graphics card. The link to these GPUs and also bonus ones will be down below in the video description, and if you find valuable information throughout this video, leave a like and subscribe as it's going to help the channel grow a lot. That being said, let's start. First, I want to start by saying that these are amazing budget graphics cards, but there are some graphics cards in the market that are actually bad for the price. So I will start by talking about the graphics cards that you should avoid buying, and then I will talk about the GPUs that you should be buying if you are on a tight budget. We will start with 1080p resolution, and the first graphics card that you should avoid is the RTX 3050. The 6GB version and 8GB one are actually too expensive for the level of performance that you get, especially when we compare this graphics card with the competition from Intel and AMD. Now, before moving into the next graphics card that you should avoid, I want to say that I'm covering brand new graphics cards only, so I am not covering the used market today. The next graphics card to avoid is the RX 6550 XT. This one is horrible in terms of value because it comes with 4GB of VRAM, which is not going to be enough for most modern titles at 1080p, and it's only going to be enough for esports shooters like Valorant, for example. And then the last graphics card that you should avoid is the RTX 3060 8GB version. This one is horrible in terms of price to performance. Right now it is actually more expensive than the 3060 12GB version or RTX 4060, and both of them are much faster in terms of gaming performance. And now let's go with the best budget graphics cards for 1080p resolution. For under $200, you can get two different graphics cards that I do recommend buying. The first one being the Intel Arc A580. This is a very decent GPU, right now going for around $170, and you will be achieving 60 plus FPS on average, and I'm talking about high demanding titles on high to ultra settings. If you want to play easier to run games, this graphics card is going to be ideal for those titles, and you will be achieving high FPS regardless. And in terms of esports shooters, you can achieve 144 plus FPS on average, and the next graphics card, in my opinion, is the best value under $200, and this one is the RX 6600. Right now going for $190, and you can achieve 70 plus FPS when it comes to high demanding titles at 1080p on high to ultra settings, and this one is better than the Intel Arc A580 because the drivers are better optimized as well. The only bad thing about this graphics card is that AMD stopped producing them, so you should get one while it's on stock. In terms of esports games, you can expect 165 plus FPS on average competitive settings depending on the CPU that you have. For under $250, you can get the RX 6650 XT, so you are able to average over 80 FPS when it comes to 1080p in the most high demanding games, and you can achieve 240 plus FPS in esports shooters depending on your CPU. Now, the only bad thing about this graphics card is that AMD stopped producing them, so while this graphics card is on stock, I would buy it as soon as possible if this is your budget. Then for around $300 or below, we have two more graphics cards. One is the RTX 4060. I tested myself in the past for a Fortnite PC. You are going to be able to play any game that you want, even the high demanding ones, 90 plus FPS on average. And then on esports shooters, you can expect between 240 and 360 plus FPS on average competitive settings. So if you want to see a complete PC build with the RTX 4060, you will find that video in the top right of the screen. But I do think that there's one more graphics card that's much better in terms of price over performance, and that is the RX 6750 XT. This graphics card is going for $300 if you want to upgrade to a 1440p monitor down the line. This one is a much better option, and it also comes with 12 gigs of VRAM instead of 8 gigs of VRAM, which is ideal for 1080p right now and 1080p in modern games in the future. In this case, with the 6750 XT, you can expect over 100 FPS and over 70 FPS when it comes to 1440p high demanding games. Then if you want to play esports shooters, you can expect about the same level of performance as the 4060 depending on the CPU that you have and the esports shooter that you are playing. Now let's talk about the budget graphics cards that I haven't mentioned, and these are in the gray zone. The first one is the Intel Arc A750, which is about the same price as the RX 6600, provides slightly faster gaming performance, but once again, the Intel drivers are not the same as the AMD ones. The next one is the RX 7600. This is basically the same graphics card as the RX 6650 XT, but it's about $30 more expensive. It's also newer and it has AV1 encoding. The RX 6650 XT is out of stock. Then this one is going to be the next best option. The next one is the RTX 3060 12GB. I would only recommend this graphics card if you need more than 8 gigs of VRAM for your workloads. Let's say you're a content creator and this is going to be beneficial for you, then get the 3060 12GB version instead of the 4060. But if we are talking about pure gaming performance, the 4060 is going to be the better one in terms of value. And the last one that I haven't mentioned is the RX 7600 XT. This one has 16 gigs of VRAM, so once again, if your workloads require more than 12 gigs of VRAM, this might be the better option. Now let's talk about 1440p. Let's start with the GPUs that you should avoid for 1440p resolution. And before talking about that, I want to say that budget doesn't necessarily mean cheap. When we talk about 1440p or 4K resolution graphics cards, some of these might be expensive, but considering the market, these are the entry-level graphics cards for these resolutions. That being said, the first one that you should avoid is the RTX 4060 Ti 8GB version. I wouldn't recommend this one because at this price point, for around $375, you should be getting more VRAM. For 1440p resolution, I would recommend at least 12 gigs of VRAM, considering that the competition has graphics cards with 12 and 16 gigs of VRAM for the same price, and they also perform faster. And then the next graphics card you should avoid for 1440p is the RTX 4070 Ti. I love this graphics card in terms of performance. In fact, that PC right there has a 4070 Ti. I love it in terms of performance, but you have to keep in mind that I bought the 4070 Ti on release, because right now this one is not great in terms of price performance. It's about $700 and it comes with 12 gigs of VRAM. Now let's talk about the best budget 1440p gaming graphics cards right now. For under $400, you have two options. First one being the RX 6800 or the RX 7700 XT. Both of these graphics cards have a similar price tag and they are actually the same in terms of gaming performance, but you have to keep in mind that the 7700 XT is newer, so it has a newer architecture, it comes with AV1 encoding, but it is slightly more expensive, and on top of that it has less VRAM than the RX 6800. The 6800 on the other hand is cheaper, has more VRAM and the same level of performance. So both of these will achieve 80 plus FPS when it comes to high demanding games at 1440p resolution, which is pretty awesome. For under $500, you have two graphics cards, and those are the RX 6800 XT and 7800 XT. Now the 6800 XT is quite cheaper and will achieve about the same level of performance as the 7800 XT, which is top tier at 1440p, achieving 90 plus FPS when it comes to high demanding titles on high to ultra settings, while costing $40 less than the 7800 XT. However, the 7800 XT is newer, has AV1 encoding, and it's slightly faster for gaming. Now, there are two GPUs in the gray zone for 1440p, the first one being the RTX 4060 Ti 16GB version. Now, this one is not ideal for gaming, considering that the RX 6800 XT is going for around the same price point and it is much faster in terms of performance. However, if your main focus is content creation, for example, Nvidia usually works better with those type of applications or 3D rendering. And if that's your main priority, then the 4060 Ti 16GB version might be a good option if you do not want to spend anything over $500. Now, if we talk about gaming strictly, well, the 6800 XT or 7800 XT is about 30% faster and it's going to cost you the same price. And then the second graphics card in the gray zone is the RTX 4070. In my opinion, it's hard to justify for gaming considering that you have the 7800 XT and 6800 XT for a lower price, and both of these GPUs are going to perform about the same as the 4070. And also you have to consider that the 4070 Super is slightly more expensive than the 4070 and it's going to be quite faster. And then let's talk about 4K resolution gaming. Once again, these are not cheap graphics cards, but these are still budget options considering the resolution. And before talking about these GPUs, I want to say that if you are finding valuable information so far, leave a like and subscribe as it's going to help the channel grow a lot. So the first GPU you should avoid for 4K resolution is the RTX 4070. This one has 12 gigs of VRAM, which is not ideal for 4K, it's just not there when we talk about high demanding titles on high to ultra settings. And the second GPU you should avoid for 4K is the 4070 Ti, once again for the same reasons as before. Now let's talk about the best budget GPUs for 4K. First one, for under $600 is the RX 7900G RE. This one is actually quite fast for 4K. You can achieve 60 plus FPS native resolution in high demanding games, high to ultra settings. It comes with 16 gigs of VRAM, but I do recommend you turning on FSR if you will be playing high demanding titles for you to achieve 80 to 100 plus FPS, but of course it will depend on the exact game and the settings. And then for under $700 you can get the RX 7900 XT, which is quite faster, and you can expect 75 plus FPS on average when it comes to high demanding games on high to ultra settings with no FSR enabled. And now let's talk about two graphics cards that are on the gray zone. The first one is the 4070 Ti Super. I love this graphics card and I do think that it's better than the 7900 XT. However, this graphics card is going for around $800, which means that it's not a budget graphics card anymore. And then the second GPU in the gray zone is the 4070 Super, and the reason why this one is on the gray zone is because it comes with 12 gigs of VRAM. If you must have Nvidia and you do not want to spend anything over $700, then the 4070 Super might be a good option. Just keep in mind that I do recommend you turning on the DLSS, and you will have some limitations with 12 gigs of VRAM depending on the games that you want to play and depending on the settings. Now, before talking about how not to bottleneck any of these graphics cards, I want to give you my personal opinion because many people think that I'm an Nvidia fanboy or an AMD fan. And let me make it clear, I do not prefer AMD over Nvidia or Nvidia over AMD. I think both are great, but it depends on your budget. If you are working with a tight budget, AMD is usually better when it comes to value for gaming. However, if you have a higher budget, Nvidia usually becomes the better option considering the technologies that you get. It might be interesting depending on your type of workloads. And then if you do not want to bottleneck any GPU on this list, I highly recommend you getting the proper PC around these graphics cards. That means that you need a CPU that will not bottleneck this graphics card, the proper airflow, the right power supply. So you have to keep all of those things in mind. And if you do not know anything about computers, then I highly recommend you watching my video on the best PC builds of the month for every budget and every resolution. That video will be in the top right of the screen. And remember that if you want to see the latest pricing and availability for these GPUs, they will be down below in the description. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for the support, and I will see you on the next one.